Analytics versus the eye test. Which one carries more weight? That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 11th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you, whether you're checking us out wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're catching us on YouTube. We definitely appreciate that. If you're checking us out on YouTube, that's awesome. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes. It's like his baby, right? He takes care of it, makes sure that it looks good and sounds good each and every day, dresses it up, does all the fine work behind the scenes, and does a fantastic job. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And, of course, if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And we didn't forget about you. If you're not checking us out on YouTube, you're just checking us out wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's awesome, too. We definitely appreciate that. So many people continue to hit us up on the daily that listen on Spotify and get that Spotify Wrapped and let you know exactly how many minutes you spent with us all year long. And it's incredible. I saw 10,000 minutes the other day. I thought, wow. 10,000 minutes with me? That's a lot of time. You're spending too much time with me, but we do appreciate that. So shout out to you. Coming up on the show today, we'll close out the show, as a matter of fact, with your calls and texts. Again, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Plenty of feedback. We probably won't be able to get to all of it today, but I'll squeeze in as many as possible. Segment number 2, my guy Raider Izzy hit me up on Tuesday morning and had some thoughts on analytics and when he's talking about the Raiders and being aggressive as a coaching staff and as a team, and really what kind of burns him up and drives him crazy. And it led me to the conversation about analytics versus the eye test. So I'll break it down, let you know what I think about it, what he feels, and he's even Lincoln Kennedy, the great Lincoln Kennedy, who joined my radio show on Tuesday, what he thinks about the analytics and the eye test. That all comes up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, including some roster moves that the Raiders have made. So we'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And it's never too late to jump into the season and get a big return on FanDuel. All new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. We'll tell you more about them later on in the show, but let's go ahead and jump right into news and notes, and we'll start with the roster moves. And off top, the Raiders made a handful of moves on Tuesday. They signed quarterback Carter Bradley to the active roster. He was the guy that was on the practice squad. So, of course, with the questions about Aiden O'Connell, knowing that Desmond Ridder is going to most likely be the starting quarterback coming up on Monday, and we don't know if Aiden O'Connell is going to be available, makes a lot of sense that Carter Bradley is moved up from the practice squad to the active roster. So I don't know if that means that Aiden's not going to even have an opportunity to play on Monday. If he's not coming back, for a few weeks, if he comes back this season, we do not know. But Carter Bradley was signed to the active roster. Also, the Raiders placed Zamir White on the reserve injured list, so his season is over. So he didn't really provide a whole lot for the Silver and Black as far as a starting running back position. Really a disappointing season for Zamir White, but he'll be out the next 4 games. And as we know, there's only 4 more left on the schedule for the Raiders, so his season is officially done. Also, they signed quarterback Jake Luton to the practice squad, along with defensive tackle Tyler Manoa. They both are on the practice squad, and then they released defensive tackle Marquand McCall from the practice squad. So there you go, a lot of moving and shaking, but since Carter Bradley, the quarterback, was moved up from the practice squad, they wanted to make sure they had a quarterback on the practice squad as well. So again, that doesn't sound great as far as Aiden O'Connell and his ability to come back at some time this season, but he hasn't been ruled out for the season. He hasn't been placed on IR. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a positive. Also, we'll meet with Antonio Pierce this morning. The Raiders have released their media schedule. We'll catch him today around 10:15 this morning. We'll get an update on Aiden O'Connell and where he's at, and if there's a chance that he comes back sometime this season, what the move for Carter Bradley onto the active roster means, and of course, just as the Raiders start to turn the page and prepare for Monday Night Football action versus the Atlanta Falcons. So that'll be at 10:15. We'll get a small window to view the practice and stretching and individual drills. That's from 10:45 to 11. And then at noon to 12:45, these are all Pacific time, the locker room will be open. So we'll get an opportunity to catch up with a few of the players in the locker room, see how they're feeling and, what they're thinking heading into this primetime action coming up on Monday versus the Atlanta Falcons. So finally, I want to wrap up segment number 1 here, news and notes of the day. With Davante Adams. Yeah, that's right. The X is still looking back at the Raiders, and I have a lot of respect for Davante Adams. I want to be as perfectly clear as possible. I have a ton of respect for Davante Adams. Never had a problem with him while he was with the Raiders. Still don't have a problem with him. And I definitely don't have a problem with Kay Adams from the Up and Adams show. She does a fantastic job. I encourage people to check it out all the time. And on Tuesdays, Davante Adams is a guest. So somehow, some way, every single week, the Raiders come up. And I guess because the Jets stink and they've been officially eliminated as well, just like the Raiders. So we all know Davante made the move. He said that he preferred to play elsewhere. The Raiders, Tom Telesco, made the move, traded him to the New York Jets, and everything else is history. But he can't help himself but to say something about the Raiders. And again, I try not to be petty. I try not to even care. I mean, he doesn't play for the Raiders. They got a third-round pick out of it. But for some reason, what he said on Tuesday kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I just thought that I would bring it to the table. So here's Kay Adams, and she's teeing him up to talk about the silver and black and the decision, obviously, to be, traded, wanting to be traded from the Raiders to the New York Jets, knowing that, well, they haven't done much better than the Raiders as they've got 3 wins on the season, as the Raiders have 2. So here's a quick minute and a half from Davante Adams on the Up and Adams show with Kay Adams on Tuesday.
And you were very clear. I'm not a savior. I'm coming in there because it's a good situation for me and everything that sort of went down. You were very pragmatic and reasonable about it. I feel like that with the losses and everything, it's a little less optimistic, obviously. I'm getting the sense that you feel like you can't win there, that this team can't win.
Well, not this year. That's for sure. I mean, every year is a new year. It takes, it just takes a new year, a new chance to kind of turn things around. So I'm not saying that this organization is just cursed forever, but it's, it's obviously we've had a bunch of wins. I'm sure if you were tracking the Jets, you've been looking and seeing, the Jets got they got to have this one, and then just finding a way to lose. So it's really frustrating, but I definitely came in. It was the right thing to do. It made sense. Nobody can look at this move and say that it made more sense for me to stay in Vegas in the situation I was in there. If they do, then they're just hating and just talking like how they do. But at the end of the day, just if you look at the numbers, I mean, it's just like you going to war and somebody saying you got a knife and everybody else got rifles, and then somebody finds a rifle and they hand you a rifle and you say, all right, great. So you start going and you go to shoot the rifle and it jams up. That's like saying, oh, damn, I should have just kept my knife. Like, no, you did the right thing by grabbing the rifle. That thing just didn't work the way you intended it to. And sometimes that happens, and you gotta live with that and go from there. And that's kind of where I am.
So what caught my attention by what he had to say there was, one, he's talking about, anyone who's talking about the move and they don't like it is just a hater. That has nothing to do with anything. Nobody is hating on Davante, as I mentioned. I have a ton of respect for that dude. He's a great wide receiver, and I think any team would like to have him on the team. But what caught my attention is when he said, look at the numbers, right? Look at the numbers. He just look at the numbers, and you could tell, all right, well, it's not the wins total number because they only have 3. The Raiders have 2. Not a big deal. You look at his total numbers for the season, 58 catches, 662 yards, and 4 touchdowns in 10 total games. So let's deep dive into the numbers. It's funny, we'll talk about analytics coming up in segment number 2. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive into the numbers. Davante played 3 games with the Raiders in 2024. In those 3 games, he had 18 catches on 27 targets for 209 yards and a touchdown, right? So that's 3 games. He's played 7 with the Jets. So let's just double it up. Let's just bonus the Jets a game. So if you double up his production that he did with the Raiders in 3 games, he was on pace for, in 6 games, 36 catches, 418 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's basic math. So I'm just assuming that he would still have about that same production, right? 18 catches, 27 targets in 3 games. I think it's pretty safe to say that Davante would have 36 catches, 418 yards, and 2 touchdowns after 6 games. So why do I bring that up? Because he's played 7 games with the Jets. For those 7 games, he has what? 40 catches on 69 targets, 453 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So when he says, look at the numbers, they're not much different. They're not much different. There's really not a whole lot of difference when you look at the numbers. Again, through 6 games, he would be on pace for 36 catches. In 7 games with the Jets, he has 40. And that's with a guy who's going to walk into the Hall of Fame in Aaron Rodgers. Not Minshew, not O'Connell, not Desmond Ridder, but Aaron Rodgers. 69 targets, right? So actually, I think he did more with less with the Raiders. And 453 yards, okay, so he has a few more yards, and he has one more touchdown than he probably would have through 6. Again, I know I'm being petty. I'm not trying to be petty, but I feel like that he fires shots at the Raiders for no reason, right? And again, have a lot of respect for him, a lot of respect for Kay Adams, but it's just unnecessary. I always say that, instead of looking back for your ex, you need to look for your next. Davante and the Jets, that's a whole nother situation. I'm just glad that the Raiders were able to get from underneath that contract, right? Have no dead money, was able to move that on to the Jets, and then also get a 3rd-round pick out of it. And that's going to help the Raiders in what they try to do in 2025 moving forward, because a team that only has 3 wins is going to have a very high draft pick, and the Raiders will have a high draft pick in round number 3, thanks to Davante Adams. But I just had to bring that to the table. I couldn't help myself. But speaking of numbers, analytics versus the eye test. What matters the most to you? I'll explain where this came from, how this came about, what matters to me, and you'll also hear from Lincoln Kennedy and let you know what he thinks about analytics. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors, which is Built Rewards. And if you're a renter, you need to listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. You can earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotels, stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com. That's join, joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our link so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today with Built Rewards. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into the conversation, analytics versus the eye test. And if you've been listening to this show for a long time, know me personally, you know I'm not a big analytics guy. I'm not a huge pro football focused guy. I'm not a guy that's going to sit there and crunch the numbers and look at all the percentages and this, that, and the third, even though I broke down the numbers when it came to Davante. That was basic math. That's about as far as I go with it. I like to go with the eye test. But I respect the hell out of Pro Football Focus. I respect the hell out of analytics. I know it's a part of sports. I know it's a part of football. But for me, it's just it's like a reference point. It's something that I look at and I say, okay, let me double check to see if that's what I see with the eye test. But this all came about on Tuesday. My guy Raider Izzy, who you hear in segment 3 quite a bit, he'll call into the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, give his thoughts on the team, whatever's going on, results of a game, whatever. He's been listening to the show for a long time. Good dude. And always has some really good thoughts and even concerns at times. So Izzy hit me up Tuesday morning, bright and early. Matter of fact, 5:52 a.m. Right? And when it tells you a lot about me, I responded at 5:55. So I have a problem. Clearly, I have a problem because I responded at 5:55 a.m. We're talking Raiders, which at some point I think I need to make a Raider-free hour of my life or something. Out of the 24 hours in a day, one of those or two of those hours probably need to be Raider-free. I'll work on that at some other time. But I was up. I was getting ready to host Greeny on ESPN Radio, which on the West Coast at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. I've been doing that quite a bit the last handful of weeks. And so, matter of fact, I'll be doing it again this morning. So I was already up. I was getting ready for that show, but he sent me a tweet, and then he had a message on it that says, "This is the conservative stuff that drives me crazy." And on the tweet, it said, Las Vegas decided to punt to Tampa Bay from the Raider 29-yard line on 4th and 1 with 11:58 to go. They were down 14-10. With a surrender index of 9.07, this punt ranks at the 96th percentile of cowardly punts of the 2024 season and the 91st percentile of all punts since 1999. So what does that mean to the layman? Basically, that Antonio Pierce should have gone for it. But for me, and this was my response to Izzy early in the morning, was, yeah, I get the analytics side of things, but you also are on a backup quarterback in Desmond Ridder, right? You're a team that hasn't really done that great offensively. And oh, by the way, your defense is playing really well, and it's still a close game. If you don't pick it up, if you don't pick up 4th and 1 from your 29-yard line, you're giving them an automatic 3 points as far as I'm concerned. So I feel like the right decision was made, And it's funny, I went back to Raider Eddie in Denver's call and thought about that from Monday's show where he was saying and talking about Antonio Pierce not getting better as a head coach. And I'm thinking, is this what he's talking about? That AP cost the Raiders the game because he decided to punt on 4th and 1? Because I fully back that decision. You have 12 minutes left in the game. That is plenty of time, in my opinion, to punt the ball with your A.J. Cole, which is a Pro Bowl punter, right? A guy that can flip the field, does a fantastic job, pin Tampa Bay deep. Your defense is playing really well. That's why the game is close. Remember, it was 14-0 in the first quarter. Now you're talking about in the fourth quarter with 12 minutes left to go, they're still sitting at 14. So obviously your defense has done a really good job sacking Baker Mayfield and turning the ball over. So you put them in position to get off the field, 3 and out, get off the field, and you get the ball back, and you have an opportunity to go win the game. That's how I look at it. And that's how I know at one point football used to be played. But now you put analytics in it, and now all the time on the broadcast it says, well, analytics says you should go for it on this play. Well, I get that. But to me, analytics doesn't tell the story of who's in the game, what's the weather's like, what's the momentum been like? How's the team been performing? Who's the personnel? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that the numbers don't tell. And look, Raider Nation, I used to sell Kirby's. Those are $2,000 vacuums. I could make the numbers look like whatever I want to justify what I'm trying to do. Right? So I used to sell a $2,000 machine and make it make sense financially and by the numbers because I can dance them up and dress them up. So I get it that the analytics say, oh, you should go for it, this, that, and the third. But I just never signed up for it, you know. And again, I don't mind cross-referencing and looking at, but I don't want to live and die by just the analytics. And it's funny because we always talked about Brandon Staley when he was the head coach of the Chargers, that he would always go by the analytics. Like that's all that mattered to him. And more times than not, he made a wrong decision. And everyone said, look at that dummy. Why is he doing that? I can't believe he did that. That was an idiot. That was dumb. And guess what? He got fired because he didn't win enough games, right? And so I know if you go for it, like we saw Dan Campbell go for it the other night, and you know it was a tough decision, tough call. He did it. He rolled with his team. He trusted they were going to pick it up. He also didn't think the defense could stop Green Bay, so that was another reason why he did it. He went on 4th down 5 times on what was that Thursday Night Football? Went 4 for 5. Right? I mean, and look, that's just what he's done. But I look at the Raiders and say, yeah, you know, you can't always go for it. Now, if you're in, you know, Tampa Bay's territory, that's another question. But you're literally at your own 29-yard line. So, like I mentioned, I'm not a big analytical guy. I understand that it plays a part. I know there's some front offices in different sports that's all they rely on is analytics. I don't think that's a good decision either. I think you have to have a balance. But don't take my word for it. It's funny. Lincoln Kennedy, he joins my radio show. I talk about it all the time. Joins me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you know, to preview the game coming up. That'll be on Thursdays, and then review the game that just passed. He does that on Tuesday. So I asked him straight up about analytics and how important he feels like they are in the game today. I thought he had a really good answer. So here's Lincoln Kennedy talking about how big analytics are for football right now.
Today's game, a lot. I hate analytics. I understand what they're the purpose. I get them, but I hate analytics because football to me is a game about feeling. It's a game about emotion. It's a game about the output. Analytics to me belongs in baseball, belongs in basketball. Those are where the numbers become, you know, concrete, where they serve more purpose. Analytics in football. If I'm a head coach and I'm managing a game and I'm sitting and the ball is close to midfield, and I know I need something, I need a spark. I don't need to look at a piece of paper and say, well, analytics say you should go for it on 4th and 1. If I feel my team can get it, you call it. If you don't, you call it. You go with it. That's the difficulty of being a head coach. And to me, that's what it comes down to. In the National Football League especially, I believe that head coaches should be game managers. I don't want you calling plays. I don't want you calling offensive plays. I don't want you calling defensive plays. Game managers. If you need to get someone in and out of the game manage. Time situation, game managed. That's what you should be focused on, concentrate on as a head coach in the league.
Yeah, and see, that's my thing as well. I go with the gut feeling, I go with the game flow, and I feel like the analytics, they tell a story, Lincoln, but they don't tell the whole story all the time. You know?
And that's why I say I can't stand them. I get it. There are those stat freaks out there that want to crunch the numbers. Oh, this guy is 70% chance to get it, and he's ranked the 21st tackle in the league. Oh, come on! If the guy can play, he can play. I don't need all these numbers to help support the facts. It is what it is.
So there it is. I mean, he's responding and saying how important they are as far as they play a big role. But you heard Lincoln, a guy who's been in the trenches, a guy who's been there, done that. He's not a fan of analytics. Matter of fact, his words, not mine. He hates them, right? And says, save that for baseball, save that for basketball. That's not for football, and gives some really good reasons. And I'm not saying that you have to hate them. I'm not saying that they don't carry any weight. I think that they definitely carry some weight, but I don't think that everything should be judged based off of, well, because the numbers told me that this is what has to happen, or the numbers say this, or the numbers say that. The numbers don't always tell the story, right? I mean, look, you have basically your third quarterback. Gardner Minshew's done for the season. Aiden O'Connell left the game. Desmond Ridder was in there. So you're counting on Desmond Ridder, who had already came into the game and fumbled the snap, right? You're counting on him that everything's going to go smooth. You have a running back in Sincere McCormick that's still trying to get used to, the NFL game. He's only in game 3 that he's been in. You've got a young offensive line, a young center that just went through some stuff, on Black Friday against Kansas City, when he snapped the ball when he wasn't supposed to. I mean, there's so many different things that are going on. Sometimes you just have to know your team better than what the numbers tell you. The numbers could say a lot of different things, but doesn't necessarily mean it's always right because they're not there in the moment. So it's funny, and I would love to hear from you. And we had a pretty good discussion about this on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Tuesday. And again, it comes from Raider Izzy's tweet that he sent me, or the message that he sent me along with the tweet about being conservative. And to his point, he's like, well, the Raiders need something and they don't have anything to lose. Well, I mean, they do, right? If Antonio Pierce goes for it on their 29-yard line and they get stuffed, and all of a sudden Tampa Bay gets the ball back and punches it in the end zone for one play, everyone is calling the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line and saying, that he's an idiot. Why would he do that? That's dumb. No. Why would you back it up on your own? You're already backed up on your own side of the ball. Like, everyone is dogging him. So it's one of those, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't type moments, right? I mean, you just really, there's no right answer. If you go for it and you get it, you're a hero. But anything else outside of that, you're a zero, right? And that's just the reality of it. So I had no problem with 12 minutes. Now, if there's 2 minutes, that's different. 3 minutes, different. 4 minutes, cool. But 12 minutes, that's so much time left in the game, especially when your defense is playing well. But again, I know it's different strokes for different folks. So I definitely respect the ones that live and die by Pro Football Focus and all the smart people out there, all the analyticals, the Sharp football, Warren Sharp. I think he does a really good job. Like, again, there's certain expertises that we all have. Mine, I rock with the eye test. What my eyes tell me is what I believe. And it's okay to go back and look at Pro Football Focus and cross-reference it. Well, PFF said that DJ Glaze had a really good game. He was okay, right? He missed a couple blocks at critical moments, right? But the PFF doesn't tell you, oh, in that critical moment, that missed block weighs more than it does in the first quarter in the first play, right? I mean, it's just, it doesn't add up like that. And I know we have mathematicians that call the show. I like that. I'm not that guy. But what is your thoughts? 707-654-4693. Analytics, eye tests. How much do you weigh each side of them? Do you put a little bit of both? Do you rely heavily on the analytics? Do you rely heavily on the eye test? What is your vibe? How do you get down? Again, 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will close out the show. We'll do it next here on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor of the show, and it is the IceShaker. And if you're checking this out on YouTube, look, I found it. I found the IceShaker that they sent us. So Raiders IceShaker. It's awesome. It looks great. What a great finish it has on it. You can shake it and it doesn't make any noise. And it's so nice that the wife tried to hide it from me. And I went and found it because she heard me say that I was going to show it on the next show. So here you go. Here it is. Check it out on YouTube. If you're not checking this out on YouTube, it's just it's nice, it's smooth, it's black. It says Raiders just win, baby. Established in 1960. Has the shield, nice, great plastic. It's not one of those where it's, those like metal cups that you have that they absorb stink and you start shaking them up and you hear the little metal ball and all that stuff. The real cheap stuff. This is not one of them. This is high quality. You definitely want to have this in your collection. If you want to check it out, it doesn't have to be Raider exclusive. They have so many different partners that they're with. IceShaker.com. Check it out there. But NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, Major League Baseball, it makes an ideal gift. And we know it's that time of year where gifts are given quite a bit. And if you're like me, you wait till the last minute, this is one that you can go to and get quick, fast, in a hurry. Again, IceShaker.com. You can even have your cup customized. So if you have a design in mind that you want to make, you could do that as well. IceShaker.com. You use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word. 25% off any IceShaker. It's just that simple. And I'll tell you right now, you might want to get one for yourself, because if you get one for a loved one, like, I showed it to the wife and she took it and ran with it, you might not get it back. So you might want to go ahead, and if you buy one for someone else, go on and buy one for yourself as well. IceShaker.com, Locked On NFL. You'll get 25% off any IceShaker. Again, IceShaker.com, promo code Locked On NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start out with PE in North Carolina. I haven't heard from my man in a minute. He's calling to talk about the evaluation season that we've been talking about here on the show and what he's taking into consideration and what he believes it boils down to. PE in North Carolina.
What's up, Q-Pop? What's up, Raider Nation? PE from North Carolina. Thank you. To answer your question about evaluation season, to me, I really think it's pretty simple, bro. I think you just use the eyeball test. What does the team look like on the field? I've said for years, Q, that the way you win or the way you lose matters. Are you getting blown out every game and you don't have a chance to win? Are you playing well and, the other team just makes a play at the end of the game and they make one more play than you and you lose at the end of the game? Or do you win like we won against the Patriots a couple years ago, where Chandler Jones picks off the pass? Do you get lucky wins? All that stuff matters, man. And really, like I said, what it comes down to is the eyeball test. What does the team look like on the field? Antonio Pierce himself uses the terminology. Does it look right? Does it feel right? Does it smell right? And that's the way you have to judge it. Now, I'll give Scott Turner some credit. The team, since he's taken over, we've lost some close games. But before that, we pretty much getting blown out, losing by 10 points or more with no chance to win the game. So all that comes into play. Also, you have to take the game time management issues into play. You have to kind of evaluate all that, and there have been mistakes. Also, in my opinion, too, you have to look at the off season. What happened in the off season? The bad decisions that were made. Now, I don't know if you put those on Pierce or if you put those on Telesco, but that's a part of it as well. So all these things come into the picture, but the bottom line is the eyeball test. Does it look right? Does it smell right? As AP would say. And also, Q, there's one more thing I want to add to this, man, about AP. If we only win 2 games, I mean, we've had bad seasons, Q, but that is a historically bad season. I mean, 2 wins, that's, I know we've done it before, but that's not a good season. Even if we had all the injuries and everything else that we had going on, if you're a good coach and a good team, you would probably find a way to win more than 2 games. So, but to answer your question, Q, overall, I think it's just the eyeball test, bro. All right, peace out, Raider Nation.
PE, thanks for the call. Good timing, too, right? You're talking about analytics in segment number 2, and I was talking about the eyeball test. Then you hit me with, it's about the eyeball test when you're talking about evaluation season. I like it. I know it's not exactly the same conversation, but I like it, and it's 100% why I asked the question. But it's 100% why I asked the question about the injuries as well, right? When you're going through the evaluation season, when you are going through the eyeball test like you are, how much do you take into consideration the injuries that the Raiders have been hit with? And I know they're not the only team, as I've said many times, but how much do you take into consideration? Well, quarterbacks have been in and out of the lineup, right? The offensive line has been all over the place. Tons of injuries. How much weight does that carry when you're evaluating this team? And I think that you hit it on the head when you said 2 wins is historically bad. There's no doubt about that. 2 wins is awful. I've been saying it for a while that I felt like Antonio Pierce had to win more than 2 games. And then after Aiden O'Connell went down, I was like, well, hell, I don't think that he's going to win another game. I just don't think Desmond Ridder is that guy. He's a reason why he was on the Cardinals practice squad. I don't have a problem seeing what he looks like and what he's got going, but I don't think he's a backup quarterback at best, and he might not be that either. Again, he was the Cardinals practice squad quarterback, not backup quarterback, practice squad quarterback. So there you go. Right. And again, I say it all the time. I don't root for losses at this stage of the game. wherever the Raiders are in their draft order. You know, they're top 2, top 3 right now, depending on who you're asking and where you're looking. I think that a lot of folks have their eyes on the prize, even though, like I said, not actively rooting for losses, but they're a lot easier to stomach and understand when you see what's going on moving forward and what the end result could be for the Silver and Black. But PE, it's great to hear from you, my man. Like I said, always appreciate you chiming in on the show. Up next, got a text from Tim in Oregon. Hey, Q, it's Tim from Oregon. The talk is always about what players are needed, what the coaches must do, who to draft. My question today is, how can the Raiders stay off the injury report? Every season, it seems like the biggest problem with the Raiders is the long list of injured players. Yes, every team has injuries. Here's the thing. I don't care about other teams. Injuries are always the biggest detriment to this team. The teams that are successful are the teams that stay most healthy. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's certainly a huge problem for the Raiders. Have a good week, Q and Nation. You too. Tim in Oregon. And yeah, I'm with you with the injuries. And like I've been saying, it's definitely something that, exists across the league. This year for the Raiders, it seems way more extreme, though. I mean, think about it. You've just about lost both your quarterbacks for the season. You know Minshew's out for the season. We don't know the severity of Aiden O'Connell's injury, but he's already been on IR. Like, there's not a season that always happens where multiple quarterbacks are lost for a large extended amount of time, right? And I guess that was the thing that you could appreciate about Derek Carr. For the most part, he was always available, right? I mean, him being on the injury list was not a thing. Obviously, Jimmy G, that was a different subject, right? He was a guy that definitely was on the injury report. But just key players as well. You know, Christian Wilkins being out. Max Crosby missed time this year. Nate Hobbs has been out for quite a while. Zamir White was just put on IR. Jacorian Bennett is on IR. DJ Turner is on IR, right? I mean, the list goes on and on. Big Mike was out for personal reasons for like 8 weeks. I mean, there's so much that has gone on. So as much as the injuries, happen each and every year for the Raiders, this year it feels like it's the laundry list on the injury report is way longer. So, and really to key players as well. So, yeah, I don't know if there's exact science of how to stay off the injury report. The one thing I do know is that normally when a team is just blistered with injuries like the Raiders are this year, the next year is not as bad, right? Normally it kind of balances out 1 year, just like like one score wins. You get a bunch 1 year, the next year you don't really get very many at all. Right. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. They seem to always balance out like that. So I don't want to sit here and say, look, next year they won't get injured a lot, but it doesn't feel like they'll be as severe as the injuries that we've seen this year. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider fan PT from Danville. He's calling to talk about the bright spots from this season, and that was full of disappointment. But he does talk about and wants to ask about the bright spots. Here he is, Raider fan PT from Danville.
Hey, Q, this is Raider fan PT from Danville. Giving you a call. I'm thinking about the team. Obviously a season where we underperformed expectations, but there were some bright spots like Brock Bowers that heavily overproduced on the expectations. And I'm curious from your perspective, what players should we be excited about going forward and who really outperformed their expectations this season? Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
PT, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. Shout out to Danville, California, man. Went there for a little while. I went to Del Amigo there in Danville, so know all about Danville. But thanks for the call. Appreciate you. It's good to hear from you. And yeah, in a season full of disappointment, there were some bright spots, right? I mean, Brock Bowers, you mentioned him. He's been phenomenal. Jackson Powers-Johnson at the center position. He's been great as a rookie. DJ Glaze, same thing. I mean, I think that you have two really good young pieces along that offensive line that you could really build on. Sincere McCormick so far looks really good. Obviously last year, Zamir White looked really good in the 4 games that he subbed in for Josh Jacobs, and we saw what happened this year. But, Sincere McCormick looks good. Jacorian Bennett, before he went down, he was playing lights out at the cornerback position. He was fantastic. I think that that's really good. He's only a second-year guy. Definitely something to build on. Kalavon Chason, a guy that Tom Telesco pulled off of waivers. He's been getting better and better. Obviously, he had a pretty good game. Matter of fact, the last 2 games, against Kansas City and against Tampa Bay, had a really good game. Jacoby Myers is still Jacoby Myers, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league, but he's so stinking good. Trayvon Merrick, he's in a contract year. I don't know that he's going to earn a contract. I don't know what Tom Telesco is looking at or thinking, but I think that Trayvon Merrick has done a good job at the back end. So there's definitely some bright spots in a season that, has only generated 2 wins. And, a lot of guys, as I mentioned before, on the IR and been injured and out for a long time. But, there's definitely some pieces for this team to build around. They've just got to find a way to put it all together. Thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. I got a text from Andy from across the pond. It says, "Hey, Q, it's Andy from across the pond in London. Wanted to raise a point about the AP situation. I'll start by saying I'm not in the AP out camp. I think he's been dealt a losing hand this year with all the injuries and lack of a decent quarterback. That said, if we're going and getting our franchise quarterback in the draft, do we want them coming into an organization where there's doubt about the head coach position? At best, it looks like AP will be coming back with 1 year on his deal and a sizable section of Raider Nation on his back. Does that provide the right foundation given the pressure and eyeballs our new quarterback is going to have on him? Do we go out and get a new head coach, or does Mark Davis give AP a vote of confidence and extend his deal? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks, buddy. Happy Christmas to you. Yours, Ari, and all of Raider Nation." That's from Andy across the pond in London. Thanks for the text. And, yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, really. And I think that that's a question that's probably being talked about internally. Right, I mentioned on Monday's show over the weekend, I've talked to a few people that, talk to people that are a lot smarter and are a lot more in the know than I am with the everyday goings-ons inside the organization. And, those are some of the conversations, right? If you do go get a franchise quarterback, are you confident that the coaching staff is going to be right to build up that quarterback and put them in the right position? That's something that Tom Brady has talked about, stability. Deion Sanders talked about he wanted his son Shador to go to an organization that had some stability and they had the way and the means to be able to build around the quarterback. Is that something that you're confident with when it comes to the Raiders and Antonio Pierce? And that's why I keep saying the same thing about what needs to happen after the season. Before anything is said and done, when that final game of the year gets wrapped up, and the evaluation goes down between Antonio Pierce, Mark Davis, Tom Brady, and whoever else is in that office and in that room, the plan has to be laid out. All right, AP, it was a terrible year. Things went terribly wrong, this, that, and the other. What is the plan moving forward, right? I say it all the time. It's just like when you sit down your kid and say, what's the plan? And you want them to have a legit answer. All right, this is the plan. Didn't have a quarterback. We're going to get our quarterback. Look, we picked 2, or we picked 3, or we picked 1. This is who we're going to get. This is why we're going to get him. This is the coach that's going to coach him up. This is how we're going to succeed. This is what we're going to do, right? This is how I plan on attacking things in the offensive side of the ball. This is what I have a plan on defensively. These are the coaches that I have to move forward with. These are the coaches that I don't need to move forward with. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be a real deal plan. And if whatever he says, if he's able to roll it out and how he's going to get this team back in the win column and be successful, if that is what Mark Davis wants to hear and it's satisfactory with what he says, and like I said, the other decision makers, then you move forward. But if whatever he says you look at and say, yeah, don't really feel confident that that's going to be what you need to do, then you move on. I mean, it's just really that simple. That's all that you really can do, right? Because again, the biggest thing and the most important thing will be, regardless of how you feel about AP or how you don't feel about AP, you've got to have the right people in place, the plan in place to be able to let this team build and grow and be a successful unit moving forward. I mean, it's just that's what your job is responsible for if you are in the front office and if you're in ownership of the Silver and Black. You want this team to be successful, you have to do your part as well. So, and if you do move on, whoever you hire also has to have that plan, right? And that interview process, that's part of the interview process. What's the plan? Hey, this is what we have. We have this much money in salary cap space. We have this draft pick here. What do you want to do? You've seen the roster. What's the plan? That's also part of the interview process. And it's not exclusive to the Raiders. That's exclusive to every team that has an opening. So right now, it'd be the Jets, it would be the Saints, and it would be the Bears, right now. And obviously, there's going to be more teams to come. Jacksonville will probably be involved in that. Maybe Cincinnati, I doubt it. Maybe the Giants, but I doubt it. It's just there's other teams that could be involved that will have those same conversations as the Silver and Black. But that's what I got for you. Definitely appreciate the text. Appreciate all the feedback. Got a call from Raider Zay from SoCal. Text from Flatland Raider. Dom in the 209 and Robin in Virginia. We'll get to those. We'll get those on Friday's show because tomorrow we've got the crossover edition. Tomorrow's Thursday. We'll start talking about the Falcons. We'll be the Falcons. Monday Night Football. Will Kirk Cousins be playing? Will Michael Penix be playing? Will Aiden O'Connell be playing? Will Desmond Ridder be playing? We'll have a lot of answers to that we'll come up with on the show tomorrow. We'll break it on down. Offensive and defensive storylines and path to victory for Monday Night Football. So Till then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.